Hi, everybody. Do you guys ever have one of those days where you're like, I love modern technology, and then you realize it ruins everything, actually? That's the day I've had. Okay, so this is just taking its sweet time loading, which is fine because I'm just going to talk to you guys a little bit first. Well, I haven't plugged it in yet. I'm just letting it load.
That's why.
I'm telling you, it's one of those days. It's 80 degrees in October. We're all just a little confused, but it's beautiful out. So I think I see some familiar faces, but for those that don't know me, my name is Lara Kazo. Yeah. I am the adult teacher naturalist and coordinator for Mass Audubon Metro South, which means that I do all the adult programs for the 4 sanctuaries that we have. See, technology is just not on our side today. Everything is broken. One of those days. So the sanctuaries that we work out of, my office is at the Blue Hills Trailside Museum. Has anyone been there before? Yeah, a couple of you. Awesome. We just got recently a new snowy owl. So we have a male snowy owl, if anyone has been able to go see him. And if not, he's pretty cool. He looks ridiculous. This is fun. Come on.
Do you get them like when they're hurt or something?
So we only... Every time I press on the bird of prey PowerPoint, it's opening up the reptile PowerPoint. So we're really winning today. So yeah, all the animals that we have at the Trailside Museum are there because they can't be released to the wild, either because of an injury or because of they've been imprinted on people, which, oh, wait a minute. I think I found it. I know. Technology. Oh. Hold on, it's loading. Yes, we got it. Oh, goodness. All right. Let's just do this. Boop. And we're gonna make it. So, great question. Have you guys heard the story of the ugly duckling? Yeah. Okay. So the story of the ugly duckling is the story of a swan who's accidentally raised. Pictures are loading. It's fine. We'll pretend they're there. Is the story of a duckling or a swan that's raised by ducks and thinks that it's a duck. In the story, it discovers that it's a swan and goes on to live its happy swan life. In reality, it would never figure out it was a swan. It would always think it was a duck. So, for example, at my parents' farm, the chickens hatched out a duck egg. And when that happens, Nope, I was backwards. The ducks hatched out a chicken egg. So the chicken thought it was a duck. So it followed the ducks everywhere. It even went to the pond with the ducks. It followed the ducks everywhere. Couldn't swim like the ducks. Could do the things like the ducks. But it thought it was a duck, so it followed them and did everything with the ducks. Yeah. So you get birds that... Okay, well... there we go. All right. So that's what imprinting is. So all of the animals we have are either injured. So the snowy owl, the male snowy owl we just got, has a wing injury. So he can't be released back into the wild. So he was found, he was brought to a rehab, and then he was brought to us because he can't be released back into the wild. But the 2 birds, well, at least one of the birds I have today is imprinted on people because someone found them when they were young and kept her as a pet. And so she doesn't know how to go hunt her own food. She doesn't know how to protect herself from predators because she was raised by people and she thinks people are her friends. So if she was released back into the wild and this happens, she'll go to people to get food and for company. And not everyone is really cool with having a hawk, like, coming and hanging out with them. I am, but not everybody is. All right, everybody. So we're going to talk today about birds of prey. And I'm going to go for an hour. Is there anyone who strictly needs to leave at 2 o'clock? 1 or 2 people. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to go backwards then, because I want to make sure everyone gets to see our birds, because I brought 2 live birds today. So instead, I normally do the birds at the end, but because Microsoft Office hates me, we're instead going to do the birds first, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about birds at the end. Does that sound okay to everybody? Yeah. Okay, great. I am going to talk very briefly. There was a picture of me here, I don't know where it went, about myself. So I said I'm the adult coordinator for the Metro South Region Mass Audubon, the Trailside Museum, the Museum of American Bird Art, Moose Hill Wildlife Sanctuary, and Stony Brook Wildlife Sanctuary, which I think is the closest to where we are right now. Yes, beautiful. I love Stony Brook, has the waterways. It's amazing. My background is I have an undergraduate degree from from the University of Rhode Island in wildlife biology, and a master's degree from George Mason University, that's down in DC, in ornithology. So I am a bird expert. Now, I can also answer a lot of questions about wildlife conservation and stuff in general. So any questions you might have, they don't have to relate to birds of prey. I will do my best to answer today. I have been working for Mass Audubon for about 1.5 years now. Before that, I did a lot of wildlife rehab, as well as studied how birds in Brazil are affected by forest fragmentation, so the breaking up of forest habitats. But now I work with birds of prey. Birds of prey are very cool. And there's 3 types, I'll just say, birds of prey. There are occipiters, which are hawks, okay? There are falconiforms, which are falcons. And then there's our strigiforms, which are our owls. A lot of people forget that owls are a type of bird of prey. Because what makes a bird of prey? There are 3 distinguishing characteristics of birds of prey. They have very good eyesight. They have hooked beaks with sharp edges. They have talons. But the thing that distinguishes them greater than anything else is how they catch their food. So if anyone's heard of Darwin and his finches, and he discovered all that nonsense about genetics, right? Kind of, he's credited for it. He looked at finches in the Galapagos, and the way he distinguished them into different families and stuff was on their beaks. He looked at how they eat food. So birds are almost exclusively, not always, there's all sorts of different little ways that they're divided, but they're really divided by how they eat. Birds of prey, raptors, eat by catching their food with their feet. They eat meat mostly, but that's not what distinguishes them differently. Herons, for example, eat fish, and osprey eat fish. Osprey eat fish by catching them with their feet. Herons eat fish by catching them with their beak. They're not both raptors. Only an osprey is a raptor. So if it catches its food with its feet, it's a bird of prey. They also have this extremely keen eyesight. So the difference between the vision is absolutely incredible. We have 20/20 vision. I don't know where the 0 went there, but that should be 20/50 vision. So they can see about 3 times better than us. And further, an example I once heard was if you're eagle, or I think even just a red-tailed hawk, which is a little bit smaller, if you're standing on one end of the football field and there's a rat at the other end of the football field, not only can the bird see the rat, it can see it breathing. So they have incredible eyesight, and their eyes are shaped a lot differently and take up about 75% of their skull if you're an owl. So if you're an owl, your head is mostly eyeball so that you can see. This is another just cool example. Now, again, this isn't for an owl, not necessarily all our raptors, but these are demonstrations of how their vision is. So with an owl, owls do, in fact, basically have 365-degree vision. They cannot turn their head 365 degrees. So if you're an owl, you can turn your head from here all the way to here. You can't finish this part, but if you turn your head back this way, you can turn it around this way. You can also tilt your head extremely far back, but they can look fully behind them. Birds have natural goggles as well. So unlike this little parrot that they put goggles on, birds already have them built in. They have what is called a nictitating membrane. It's this third eyelid that goes sideways across their eyes. So if they're a diving bird, if they're flying, they don't get stuff all up in their eyes. So they have this special eyelid that slides over their eye to protect it as well. And they also all have specialized beaks. We're talking about raptors today. So we can see here that raptors have specialized beaks. Each one of these beaks has a specific feeding potential. So we can really look at a bird's beak and make a quick decision about probably what it eats. Raptors have this curved beak. So they all have very different ones, but raptors have these curved beaks. Now you'll notice here that I have put in a vulture. This is highly debatable in the ornithological community because vultures do not catch food with their feet. So they are not technically a raptor, but they're thrown in with the raptors a lot. But we can even see they do have the curved, sharp beak, but they are scavengers. So they don't really fall into a raptor category. They're often thrown in there because they have a lot of other similarities. They're kind of like the cousins to the raptors. They have extremely sharp talons that they use to catch their food. Again, these are very distinguished compared to other birds. We can see here the eagle grasping up top versus heron versus a perching bird versus woodpeckers and so on. So distinguished feet. These are just a couple of our raptors' feet. Mostly, they all have 3 toes in the front and 1 in the back, 3 for gripping, the other one for holding on, except for the osprey, which has 2 in the front and 2 in the back. But these guys have one that they can kind of like move back and forth from the front to the rear. But this is how they use it to catch fish. They also all have extremely specialized wings. For example, most of our raptors are gliders. So their wings pretty much lock out and then they drift with the winds, they drift with the currents and so on. Not all of them do this. For example, the peregrine falcon, the fastest animal in the world, can dive up to like 200 miles an hour, I think. Max of like the last one recorded fastest was like 180 something, I believe. So he's the fastest animal on the planet. It's not the cheetah. Yeah, I know. This bird. These guys have special wings because they all dive. They do catch their food on the wing. So they'll dive, catch pigeons out of their air with their feet. So they have these elliptical wings so they can dive and make really incredible movements in the air. And then this video, let's see if the sound is working. Or if it's going to work at all. We kind of skipped over it. This is the peregrine falcon. Nope, that was the owl again. Lord, not my day. Bloop. There we go. Much louder. So they all have... Okay. How do I make this stop now? Come on. So we have our raptors of Massachusetts, which this is now when I'm going to pull out our birds of prey and let you guys meet them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a mat right up here. You guys are a little bit close, but that should be fine because I am going to walk around with our bird of prey. I'm probably not going to be able to hold the mic. So I'll just but I'm going to we have 2 of them today, one small one, one big one. And I'm going to just talk to you guys about them, share a little bit about them and so on. And then we'll go back to our PowerPoint and do some more questions and so on there. But I just want to make sure everyone gets to meet our birds of prey. Sound good? Great. Hi. What do you feel? Is this okay? We're going to try it. Okay. So this is Flash, our American kestrel. He is a falcon, and they're closely related to peregrine falcons. He's one of the smaller raptors in North America, And he's a male, and we can tell he's a male based on his coloration. So the females are much drabber in color. They are more of a brown stripy, while the males have this bright orange and gray slate colorations with the facial stripes as well. The females have the facial stripes. Now the facial stripes are there as built-in sunglasses, actually. So you know how football players put like the lines on their face? So these are the built-in lines to help deflect the sun, I suppose. Now these guys, someone asked what they eat. They will eat mice. They'll eat other small mammals, but their main diet in the wild is dragonflies during the summer. And these guys will catch their food right out of the air. So they'll snatch the dragonflies with their feet right out of the air because they're extremely quick, and these guys have the ability to hover. And when I say that, that's a big deal in the bird world because not all birds have the ability to hover. In fact, the rarity of hovering is really removed. The only birds that can fly backwards are hummingbirds. But these guys can hover in the air. And they can hover, let's see if he'll do it for us, while keeping their head perfectly still. Did you guys get a look at that? I'll try to get them to do it again. But they can keep their heads perfectly still while their bodies are moving so that they can focus on whatever it is that they're trying to catch below them. Do you want to demonstrate? So he can keep his head perfectly still. This is because he has 14 vertebrae in his neck. He has 7 extra ones compared to people. You can do it. Yeah, so he has 7 extra bones in his neck compared to people. Hello. He has incredible eyesight. And these guys will... Where can you see American kestrels? You can see them here in Massachusetts. They are native to Massachusetts, but you're going to see them probably out west a little bit more. I have seen them in the area. I've seen them in the Blue Hills. Where's the best place to see them? And I don't recommend this, but if you're ever driving next to a meadow and you look up at the telephone lines, these guys, especially if it's a meadow and then there's a wooded area nearby, that's where they're going to be hanging out. So there you go. Yeah. So I know. So he's a lot better at it than our female American kestrel. But yes, so these guys will live in wooded areas next to meadows because that's where you can catch dragonflies and other things. And also the forested area is good for finding a hole to build a nest in as well as hiding from predators. So their lifespan, I believe, is about like 12 years. In captivity, it can be longer because he has access to food every day and water and no predators, and he goes to the vet. In the wild, they don't really have those options. Yeah. I've only known him for a year and a half. He's not actually imprinted. So he was part of a research study by the Geological Survey. They were studying how American kestrels fly so they could understand more flight stuff for, I assume, planes. I don't know. And they had a whole bunch of them that they raised in a really big, basically like the size of this building enclosure, but they didn't imprint, like they gave them food, but it was like live food. They weren't like raised like a pet. They were raised to be studied, and then every single one of them was released, but this guy wouldn't leave. So he's not like imprinted fully on people. He's probably slightly imprinted. He just couldn't figure out how to live by himself. So he's not imprinted on me. He's not really imprinted on anyone. He's used to me. I'm sorry, I forgot that you don't know the mic. He's very used to me because I work with him and handle him, but he works with a lot of our education staff, and we don't force them to do anything. So, you know, when he came to us, the animal care staff worked with him a lot, got him comfortable with sitting on people's hands. He is attached. He has little anklets on, leather anklets. That he wears, and then I attach basically a leash to those, because if I let him go in here, first of all, he'd probably hit a window and give himself a concussion or break his collarbone basically, and he'd probably get scared and be really hard to catch him because these guys are fast. So cousins of the peregrine falcons can dive like 200 miles an hour. These guys can hit like 80 miles an hour, and he's that small. So he can go really quickly. So catching him is a adventure. When it's happened. Small. I don't know exactly off the top of my head. Maybe like a foot. Maybe each wing is like probably a little more, because I think his wings tip to tip are definitely longer than 6 inches each, but I don't have an exact measurement, but somewhere around there. It's not very large. Who else has questions? Nobody? Really? Yeah. He does. He has never made sound around us before. I don't know if that's because he didn't learn how to make the sounds properly, or if he just has no reason to talk to us. But these guys do have like kind of like a, I can't do it. It's like a I think it's spelled in the bird books as like a K-I, like ki kind of noise. Baby. That was impressive. You've never managed to do that one before. He's okay. Yeah. So they do definitely make noise. Other questions? But he's not going to make it. I've heard we have a female kestrel too, and she sometimes has noticed something while I'm on program. She'll scream at it. But she's only done that like once. Yes. Nothing. It's like holding like quarters. I think we did it once, and it was like the equivalent of like 3 quarters. He doesn't weigh anything. The only reason that I feel anything right now is because I got my COVID, flu, and tetanus shot in this arm today. Mistake. But really the only thing I can feel is his feet. It doesn't weigh anything at all. It's kind of crazy. Their bones are hollow. They weigh nothing. Anything else about him? I'll walk around with him one more time. His name is Flash. So we didn't name any of our birds up until last year. In theory, we didn't want to give anybody names because we work with a lot of children. We go into a lot of school systems, and we didn't want anyone to think that these are our pets, because they're not our pets. It's very illegal to keep a wild animal that you find, especially a migratory bird. He technically doesn't really migrate, but they're all kind of considered migratory birds. So he is highly protected by status, but we didn't want the kids to think they were pets. So the theory was, if we don't give them names, they're not going to think that they're our pets. Well, research actually showed differently, and it showed that by giving them names, kids form like a better bond with the animals and can learn and focus actually a little more about them. So by telling the kids, this is Flash, the American kestrel, they're probably going to go home and be like, Mom, I met like this really cool bird. His name was Flash. He's an American. It just helps with the memory and the learning abilities. So we did name everybody. This is Flash. The female that we have, her name is Cricket, because they do like to eat crickets as well. He is beautiful. I agree. Now, a couple weeks ago, he looked ridiculous because they do molt. Now, birds of prey, usually when they're molting, are going to molt one feather in their wings at a time. And then they might molt their body and head at different points as well. But now, see, this is my researcher brain coming out, and I really would love to know the answer to this. I just don't. I think in captivity, they're less concerned about how they molt, because in the wild, they molt like a couple feathers at a time because they need to keep being able to fly.
What would they do if it was raining out?
They just get wet.
Yeah, exactly. That wouldn't be good.
Yeah. No. They just get wet. They'll hide in trees and so on. But in captivity, I've noticed that they'll molt like a ton of feathers all at once. I don't know if this is because they don't have to worry about predators. I'm not sure. I'd love to study the reasons. But a week or two ago, he looked ridiculous. He looks very handsome now, though. All right. Any other questions about Flash before I bring out our second bird? Yes. So this is, I mean, he's an American kestrel. So these guys, and I have a map that I'll pull up that I usually show before I bring the animals out. But he's mostly native, I think, to the, well, I've seen them in Arizona. So I think maybe all of the 48 continuous states, maybe a little bit down into Mexico. But yeah, they're not, these guys are not in any other parts of the world. Yes. Yeah. So the oiling, they do have an oil gland. It's not like a duck. So ducks have like a very intense oil gland that they cover their feathers and that protects them from water. But these guys, they have an oil just to like keep their feathers healthy, but it's not going to waterproof them like a duck. If they get wet, they get wet. So great question. So when I worked at the wildlife rehab, hold on, I'm gonna put the mic down while I put them inside the box. We just use anesthesia, just like with people, but you don't really want to knock a bird out. It is really hard to do it without killing them, basically. So you really don't do it unless you desperately need to. When I was at a wildlife rehab in New Zealand, we really only did it with the bigger birds. You try to do it with a small bird, it's really dangerous. Can be done, but it's really dangerous because they have air sacs. It's like a different system. It's really complicated. But we did it with an albatross and tried to pull a fish hook out of the albatross. Yeah. I said try it. There's only a 30% success rate in bird rehabilitation. It's really tricky. They have hollow bones and nonsense like that. Like, they don't make it easy. So they'll do like sleeping gas and stuff. It's very variable on where you are, what the protocols are, what the animal is. All right, I'm going to take out our second bird. Is this okay? Look at it. Is that okay? Okay. All right, so this is Amelia, our broad-winged hawk. Amelia is imprinted on people. Her story was that she was found in a chicken coop, and the people brought her inside and kept her and fed her, and then brought her to a wildlife rehab. Wait. I think we made it. Okay. And they kept her, and they then delivered her to a wildlife rehab, where the rehab attempted to release her back into the wild. But she did not do well once she was released back into the wild. She kept going onto people's porches because she thought people gave her food, and she didn't know where else to find food, and she didn't know how to protect herself, and she kept getting attacked by crows. Because the crows were like, this is an evil predator. We have to chase it away. But she didn't know what to do. So she was brought back to the wildlife rehabs, and she was homed with us at Mass Audubon. So she is imprinted on people. So she thinks people are her friends. She thinks people give her food, and she likes to hang out with people. Which is true, huh? Yes. Now, yeah, she is beautiful. So Amelia is a broadwing hawk. She is a female, but the only way we can tell that she is a female is by a blood test. Most raptors, and even like parrots too, most raptors are, here's the term for you guys, not sexually dimorphic, which means that the males and females look exactly the same in their coloration and so on. The females might be a little bit bigger, but it's really hard to tell unless they're sitting next to each other or you have a scale. Now, someone asked about how much she weighs. So she probably weighs, I think I actually know. I think she's like 800 grams, which is like a half pound. I think so. Right-ish. 8 ounces, but we're talking grams. She doesn't weigh much. If I held her for a long... But the thing is she's sitting on my wrist. So it's kind of like holding like a gallon of milk after a while, but just having it like dangle, you know? So, but she doesn't weigh much. Now, the red-tailed hawk, when I hold her for a while, that starts to hurt. So I would consider her a medium-sized raptor. We have much bigger ones. The red-tailed hawk, for example, and the great horned owl are bigger than her, but she's my favorite, so I brought her today. Now, her name is Amelia because she does migrate. I mean, she doesn't. She lives with us. But broad-winged hawks are migratory. They will leave Massachusetts in the fall, so they're actually migrating right now. And where do they go? Well, kind of wherever they want to. A lot of smaller birds, they migrate with the angle of the sun. So it's not about temperature at all. It's just about where the sun is in relative position. So that's how they know where to go and when to come back. These guys, they might just go to like Jersey and be like, this is warm. There's plenty of food. So they're just going to go where there's enough food. So some of them might even stay in Massachusetts if it's like a warm winter, like it was last winter, and they might not migrate at all because they're just following food availability. So we named her Amelia after Amelia Earhart. She was born in 2015. So 8. She's 8 years old. These guys can live till about like 16, 18 in the wild, but like into their 20s in captivity. So she also eats mice. They'll eat rats. They'll eat like smaller birds, even a snake. She gets fed mostly mice and chicks at the museum, and we don't feed anything live. First of all, because that's mean. We don't believe in releasing a live animal to be hunted down. Also, it's unnecessary for us to do that. Also, she doesn't know how to catch her own food anyway. So we feed everything frozen. So we order in, it's frozen, we thaw it out and give it to them. She eats once a day. And actually, we found out she was a female before the blood test because she laid an egg. Now, the way you can tell, she might be, I'm going to walk really slow with her. Now, the way we can tell if it's a broad-winged hawk when they're flying is they have a striped tail. So you can't really see it right now, mostly because she is missing a couple of her tail feathers. But from the underside of her tail when they're flying, you look at the lights, it's distinguished and striped. And like I said, she's a medium-sized bird of prey. No, well, it was unfertilized. There was no male. And yeah, we don't have any of our birds of prey living together. There are 2 red-tailed hawks that were living together for a while, but when they're imprinted, they don't know what to do with another one of their kind. And also, for the most part, we're not legally allowed to breed any of these birds. There's lots of regulations and stuff you have to go through to be able to have breeding birds. Now, she's not an owl, so she can't turn her head quite as far, but she can look pretty much completely over and turn her head quite far in different directions. She's really interested in your lights right now. Who has questions about Amelia? She is very beautiful.
She looks like she has the necklace like almost like an osprey female has around her neck.
Kind of. Mostly that's like just the pattern of her feathers, so the other ones might be slightly different. The patterns are not always the exact same, though they're generally, the same throughout.
Have you ever got bitten by one of them?
I used to work at zoos, so I'm gonna give you the classic zoo answer. Anything with a mouth can bite. Anything with a mouth can bite. But first of all, just like dogs, not like cats. Cats are evil. I love my cat, but she bites me all the time. But just like dogs, a dog is gonna bite you if the dog gets scared. That's why they're gonna bite you. They're gonna feel intimidated and they're gonna get scared. If she was in a scenario where she felt scared, she might try. She might try to scratch or bite me. The birds that we work with are highly calm with people. I'm not doing anything to freak her out. If she was to bite me, she would have been scared. I'm not concerned that she's going to do that or any of our birds are going to do that when I'm handling. No, don't. It's a reasonable question. The kids love to ask, does it bite? Anything with a mouth can bite. Yes. It does have some holes in the side, but no, it's actually dark on purpose because that relaxes them. Speaking of cats, when you put a cat in a nice, warm, dark place, they're like, all right. Same with these guys. Anything else? Oh, I don't know. So these guys, unlike the kestrel, they're not going to do any acrobatic moves in the air. These guys most hawks don't catch their food in the air. They're going to just see stuff on the ground and they're going to sit up in a branch or on a telephone line or something and they're going to look down and they're going to see something and they're kind of going to leap dive down. So when these guys are flying, for the most part, they're going along and hovering with the wind. So I'm like a really bad estimator, but I want to say they could probably go depending on the winds, 40, 50 miles an hour, but that's not necessarily how strong they can fly. That's about kind of the wind, Also, that could be really fake. I don't know off the top of my head of these guys. Yes. Oh, very, very good. I didn't talk about this because I wanted to make sure everyone got to see them. But birds of prey, owls really specifically have this. Owls have one ear that's kind of up here and one that's kind of down here. This is with owls. And the reason for that is because if there's a mouse over there, right? And I'm an owl and I can hear the mouse out of this ear. I'm going to turn my head until I can hear the mouse equally out of both my ears. And then I can triangulate the sound. And that's how snowy owls can catch food under snow. No, they just have one here and one here. No, they don't have any extra. It's just two ears, but one's up here, one's down here. Yeah. And it's kind of, I think I probably have a picture that I can show. Now, hawks don't have that because they don't hunt at night. They hunt during the day. Does anyone know the opposite of nocturnal? Yeah, they're diurnal. So these guys hunt during the day, so sound is not as important to them because it's noisy and loud outside. I would not be using this mic if I had an owl. Let's put it this way. It would deafen them. But these guys do have incredibly good hearing and they can hear the rustling of animals and so on. But I would compare it a little bit closer to a human who has really great hearing. Would probably be equal to a hawk, maybe a little more with a hawk, but they just have really great eyesight because again, there's too much noise during the day for them to rely solely on hearing. Anything else? Yeah. Probably. Yeah, probably. So she has the striped tail. The two others that have striped tails are Coopers and Sharpshins, but they look very different in terms of their other body coloration. So if it looks like her, could be a Broadwing. She's, like I said, pretty medium sized. So the Cooper is Sharpshin. Her maybe red shouldered as well, around these size. Yeah. If you have a photo, show me. Yes, afterwards. I have no idea why they call them Broadwing. Honestly, there's this bird called a red-bellied woodpecker. Have you guys seen this bird? It does not have a red belly. It's red on the back of the neck. I tried to tell this to my ornithology professor once, and he was like, well, there's some red. No, I don't know. I think they just have probably wider wings, maybe, and people like distinguished it that way. I don't actually know, because when I look at her wings compared to some other wings, I don't think it looks much broader in any sense. But that's a good question. I should look that up. I don't know why they're called broadwing. No, I know you're talking about like the thickness. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so, but they could, or someone observed that they did. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm not sure why they got their name as Broadwing. I don't know. Anything else? Oh, yeah, lots of questions. I love it. Yes. Oh, nice. I grew up like 20 minutes from Mount Monadnock. Well, not all the hawks around here migrate. They do all migrate around the same time, anybody that does, but not like the red tails stay here. Most of them stay here. These guys migrate. A couple of the others do. A couple of the others will, again, like kind of migrate, but birds are all going to be migrating around the same time in general in the fall. It's kind of like a couple weeks to month stretch. Yes.
Are there territorial in that they only stay in one specific area for hunting, or are there more than one type of raptor that can be in the same area?
I mean, it really depends. So they're going to be territorial when they have babies. They're going to protect their area when they're breeding, which is, good chunk of the spring and stuff. In the fall and the winter, they're not going to be as territorial because they're on the move a lot more. For example, with a lot of our songbirds, they're going to be really territorial in the spring and the summer. And then when winter comes, they're like, whatever. And they'll hang out with all the other birds. So chickadees, tufted titmice, cardinals, wrens, a whole bunch of those guys, they don't want anything to do with each other in the spring and the summer. And then winter comes around, they're like, all right, we can go get food together. Hawks, they're not really going to do that. They don't want to hang out with each other. But they might hang out with their partner and maybe their babies. Red-shouldered hawks will get together in bigger groups in the winter. But yeah, they're pretty much territorial just when they're breeding. Owls are a little bit different. Great horned owls will protect their territory year round. It just depends. I kind of feel bad always saying that, but the thing about nature and studying animals is like once someone was like, ospreys only ever eat fish. They won't eat anything else. I saw one catch a rat once. So like there's no definitive answers a lot of the time when we're talking about animal behavior. But yes and no, I guess. Other questions before I put her back? Yes. Yeah, so these guys are North American species. Most of our raptors in North America are not found in other countries. The two that I can think of off the top of my head is the peregrine falcon is found all over the world because they followed pigeons. Pigeons, I don't know if you know this, but pigeons originated off the cliffs in Africa, and the peregrine falcon hunted the pigeons, and then the pigeons were like, we really like Doritos, and they went everywhere, and the peregrine falcons followed them. So peregrine falcons are global. Barn owls are also found all over the world, but they're a different subset of species. So we have the American barn owl. There's an Australian barn owl, so on and so on. Yes. Well, tough to answer because unless they're in captivity, there's no way there's a fat bird. Like, that's not a thing in the wild. It really just isn't. If you live in the wild, you are constantly on the move. You're constantly hunting for food, and 9 out of 10 times you're not catching that food. So you're not going to be a fat wild. If I saw a fat wild bird, I'd be like, that thing is eating people food and someone is feeding it. Like, there's no way. In terms of like size that doesn't have to do with weight, not really. They're not really going to have major, I mean, some might be slightly bigger, some might be slightly smaller, just like people, but it's not going to be like major differences. I am going to put her back in the box because my wrist is getting tired. Mice. And they will like migrate, So the term migration is kind of, when people think of the word migration, they think they're going to like South America or somewhere really far down there. They're not necessarily doing that. They might, like I said, they might just go to Jersey. So the kestrels will be here year round, but some of them might go a little further down. But they'll eat mice. They'll eat really any insect. So it doesn't just have to be the dragonflies. Their food kind of changes throughout the year. Yes. So great question. I just did a talk on that bird, corvids, so crows, and yeah. So the thing is, and right away I can just say that intelligence in the animal community is, I think it's pretty complicated, because we are like, oh, well, if it can listen to human behavior, that means that it's smart. I don't know. I kind of think the birds that are like, we're not doing anything you tell us, is pretty smart. These guys survive, they migrate, they have babies, they survive, but they don't know how to say the word hello. So intelligence is a really complicated thing in the animal community, and we judge it really different ways. And I'm so sorry, what was your original question?
I was thinking of the crows, at an intersection when there are nuts and stuff in the walkway, when the crows wait until the walk sign is on, then they'll walk out because they know the cars won't hit them.
Yeah, so like some birds can learn that. So corvids are one of the ones. So corvids and parrots are the ones that are kind of the problem solvers that we hear about. I don't know if the TV just turned off. I think Debbie left. I think it did. I was going to show you guys some maps. Oh, haha. Wait. What did I didn't. Oh. Uh-oh, we lost it. My whole computer went black too. This is a technology day. No, it's okay. I think I just need to plug it in. Sorry, one more time. What was the question?
How different birds, species of birds, can adjust to...
Oh, humans. Yeah. So really, like, some birds are a lot more susceptible to imprinting than others. So for example, when I worked with robins at a wildlife rehab, those things would jump all over our arms. They would like love us. They'd hop all over us for food. And then like something would switch in their brains and they were like, people are evil. The instinct would just kick in. But raptors, crows and stuff will imprint a lot more heavily on people. So it's species specific. It's circumstances. It's just kind of how it happens. It's really complicated, but essentially is unfortunately the answer. Yes.
What is your advice on feeding birds in the summer?
In terms of
Like putting out bird feeders and seeds and stuff?
go for it.
Oh, really? Okay.
There's no reason not to. I recommend that you clean them, bleach them real good every once in a while, but there's no reason not to. There is a reason not to when there's like a disease going around. So for a little while in 20, I think it was literally 2020. Wow, this doesn't even have the maps I want. In 2021, there was a whole bunch of birds were dying from an unknown pestilence. And so we told people to stop putting out bird feeders just because we didn't know how it was spread. No, that was when I was in Virginia. It was mostly down in those areas. But there's no reason. I mean, reasons to not put out bird feeders is like bears and raccoons and other stuff getting your bird feeders. But there's nothing wrong with feeding the birds in the winter. In fact, I'm all for it because go for it. Yeah. I don't think there's any reason not to feed them. Guys, my PowerPoint got real corrupted and deleted everything. So we're just going to chat. Yes.
I was going to ask you, like, when I was growing up in school, they were worried, like, with Rachel Carlson and the silent spring and all the birds were going to go away. Is the bird population in danger? Is it holding up okay?
Well, I mean, really tough question because we have climate change and that's like an unknown. We know that it's affecting birds. We know that the rising temperatures are a problem. We don't necessarily know in general how much that's going to affect them. We also know that global deforestation is the largest problem in general for all animals ever. So like deforestation is extremely problematic. It affects all the birds, fragmentation really bad, general urbanization really bad. Hence why feeding birds is not so bad because there's less food for them to get in a lot of areas, especially if it's an urban area. So none of the birds I mentioned today are endangered. But would I consider the situation happy, healthy, and thriving? Probably not. I think we're going to genuinely see a downward spiral of a lot of species, not just birds. The frogs are not doing okay, which is really bad. Oh, amphibians. Oh, no. It's real sad. They all have this fungal disease that's killing them. The fungal disease, like polluted water, it's just spreading everywhere. Came from somewhere and now it's just spreading all over the place. General, deforestation, pollution, light pollution, noise pollution, and all of the things I'm pretty much mentioning, unfortunately, are human generated. So that's the issue. So current climate change has always been happening. It's always been a thing, but we're rising exponentially, which is really affecting these birds. A lot of birds in tropical areas are a lot more threatened, and the illegal species trade is also a huge one. Fun fact of the day, illegal pet trade is right behind the drugs and human trafficking trade. It is the third one. It makes people wildly wealthy in other countries. And Florida is a main export. Anyway, this is the American kestrel range map for someone who asked. So you can see the pink areas is where they breed. They do breed in Massachusetts. This is clearly an older map. The purple areas are where they're year-round, and the blue areas are non-breeding, so that's where they might go for migration. Again, they might go, they might not. They don't all go. Some of them might go down there. Some of them might stay here year-round. So that's the American kestrel. And then let's do broad-winged. So these guys, see, this is the map I wanted for the other one. If you guys want to learn about birds, this is the best website, all about birds, Cornell University. So the broadwings, these guys migrate. So they'll be up in our area for breeding and everything like that. And like I said, they might just stop in Jersey. They might just go to Texas. They might not go all the way down, but some of them definitely will go into South America. But you also have to think about this relatively. If they're breeding in like Louisiana, they might go all the way down. If they're breeding in Virginia, they might just go to here. So you can see like it's a big map. Some just go to Florida. And it's all relative. You might see some staying here year round too. Yes.
Do the cell towers and the radio waves and all that stuff, are they finding they're affecting the birds?
Not as far as I know. In fact, they use radio trackers to track the birds. I mean, I guess you could argue some magnetic field stuff, but as far as I know, no. No. Other stuff. And I can talk about literally anything. I'm having a great time today. You guys are fun. Anything else? All right. I'll just share this map because I think it's a good one to answer the question about the status of bird populations. This is from my master. No, I wouldn't say that necessarily, but this is just a really good one. So first of all, this is temperature differences between 2020, difference in 2020 and between the years. So we can see that temperatures have drastically risen in certain areas, higher there. But the one that I was actually interested in showing is this one. This is a map of the brightest cities. So we're over here, very, very light. All the East Coast is filled with light. The West Coast a little bit more. When we're talking migration and these birds migrating, light pollution was one of the biggest problems. The birds can't see. And the light will kind of confuse them and they'll go in wrong directions. They'll get confused and lost. So all this light, as they're trying to migrate down, can make it really confusing for them to do that. So when we're talking about migration and some of the effects, this is a big one. And then I think this map, yes, this is the places where deforestation has happened quite a bit. So we can see all the areas in pink were once forested areas and are now urban areas. So we're not horrible, but I mean, look at this big hubs of areas, look at this region. And then of course, if we get to South America, it gets pretty bad too with the cutting down of the Amazonian rainforest. But on the good news scale, lots of good things are happening. So this is an entire project about my thesis, which basically like studied the effects. And the effects were not great, but they weren't bad. In fact, some birds did really, really well and were adapting to some of these things. For example, songbirds have adapted to just talk a lot louder in areas where there's high noise. They actually will change their dialect, talk at different volumes, have different adaptations for dealing with things. And in areas where there's been forest fragmentation, which is what that picture at the bottom is, when there's like patches like that, some of the birds are just like, well, we're just not going to have kids right now. Literally, that is what they do. And so they just like, they'll get speaking of fat birds, the birds will stop like trying to reproduce and focus on self-survival, and they will start eating a lot of insects and get really healthy on their own before they start to have babies again. So we can talk about how bleak it looks. We can also talk about how these birds are adapting to these changing scenarios. And that's why it's kind of a tough question to answer.
What is that little spotted bird?
Which one? Oh, that is not a bird that we have here in the United States. That is a tropical bird. I think it's an anteater. What one is it? I know it's really cute, right? This is a bit ago now. What is it? We have the dusky-throated ant shrike. What is it? Oh, it's the scaled back ant bird, I think. That's just the female. Or is it a different one? There was a lot of them. Yeah. I don't know which one that one is off the top of my head. I should, but I can't remember. Yeah. It's from Brazil. Yeah. Technically, we're out of time, but I'm happy to continue answering questions if you want to stay or come up. Obviously, we had a little bit of an adventure today, but I think it was pretty fun. So thank you guys.